This is the chilling, unfiltered courtroom testimony from the federal trial of Sean Diddy Combs, as reported live from a packed Manhattan courtroom by inner city press. The pristine walls of one of hip-hop's most powerful empires began to crack, not under the weight of tabloids or paparazzi, but due to the persistent revelations of a man the public barely knew. Gene Deal, a former bodyguard for Diddy, Deal has been warning the public for years. Most ignored him, dismissing his claims as business or a bid for attention. But now, under the scrutiny of federal prosecution and the cold eye of a courtroom, Deal's long-dismissed stories are surfacing, and shockingly, they're lining up with newly uncovered evidence. On day 7 of the trial, a pivotal moment sent a ripple through the courtroom. A claim Deal had made years ago was validated with video footage. Jurors reportedly turned pale. Diddy looked shaken, his hands trembling as the footage played. The man once feared as untouchable, commanding parties with presidents and moguls, was visibly broken. But who is Gene Deal? And how did his voice, once ignored, come to redefine one of the most high-profile cases in modern celebrity history? Deal, a central figure during the golden years of Bad Boy Records, witnessed everything from glitzy public events to disturbing private behaviors. In interviews, podcasts, and memoirs, he painted a world where Diddy didn't just manage artists, he allegedly ruled over them through fear, manipulation, and control. According to Deal, the inner circle of Bad Boy functioned more like a military operation than a music label. There were roles, routines, and rigid expectations. Secrets were currency, privacy was non-existent. Artists, assistants, and staff were allegedly kept in line with a mix of loyalty, drugs, and intimidation. What once sounded like the tales of a disgruntled employee are now emerging as potential keystones in the prosecution's case. Deal described moments of alleged physical abuse involving Diddy and the late Kim Porter, the mother of several of Diddy's children. "I saw things I'll never forget," Deal once said. "And I kept my mouth shut for too long." Now, in open court, testimonies from police officers and former associates are matching Deal's accounts almost verbatim. One such moment involved Officer Israel Flores, who testified that in 2016, Cassie Ventura had a black eye and was desperately trying to flee from Diddy, a scene Deal had already described in past interviews. This wasn't a single act of violence. This, prosecutors argue, was a system one meticulously built and ruthlessly maintained. And Gene Deal was there bearing silent witness for years. But why speak now? And why does it matter? Deal has said he felt complicit, that years of protecting a man meant years of enabling him, that silence, born out of loyalty, fear, or both, was no longer justifiable. He described events like the so-called freak-offs, private parties allegedly filled with drugs, celebrities, and underage guests. According to Deal, these weren't just parties. They were strategic operations designed to capture compromising footage and exert long-term control over attendees. The camera was always rolling. Deal stated, "If you ever turned on Diddy, he had the footage to destroy you." These disturbing claims are echoed in the lawsuits of Cassie Ventura, Lil Rod, and other accusers. Allegations of secret recordings, NDAs, and threats now look far more credible with Deal's testimony as a backdrop. Even more disturbing, Deal alleges that Janice Combs, Diddy's mother, may have played a role in normalizing or even enabling her son's behavior. He claims she once ran a modeling agency that was actually a front for high-end sex work, a claim not yet confirmed in court, but one that hints at a multi-generational culture of silence and manipulation. As this trial unfolds, the court isn't just hearing about one man's misdeeds. It's being introduced to an entire infrastructure of control, abuse, and secrecy, where power was used not just to create music, but to orchestrate silence. By day 6 of the federal trial, cracks in Diddy's carefully curated public persona became impossible to ignore. The courtroom, once a stage for a man known for commanding attention, had become the venue where his darkest secrets were being exposed. The prosecutors weren't merely piecing together incidents, they were building a comprehensive narrative of manipulation, control, and systemic abuse, and at the heart of that narrative stood Gene Deal. Unlike other accusers, Deal wasn't a victim in the traditional sense. He wasn't looking for compensation or fame. He had nothing to gain and everything to lose. But his testimony, rooted in years of first-hand experience, was reshaping the course of the trial. As Deal painted the internal operations of Bad Boy Records, he spoke of hidden rooms, surveillance systems, and private parties where guests were not only encouraged but coerced into participating in disturbing acts. According to Deal, what looked like spontaneous celebrity indulgence was, in fact, a structured and premeditated system of psychological and physical exploitation. The parties, referred to by Diddy as experiences, were not just about hedonism. They were about control. You protect a man's body, Dill said in one interview, but you can't protect his soul. He described feeling morally responsible for the years of silence that allowed the empire to grow unchecked, but he wasn't the only one who had been close to Diddy and now questioned their complicity. Others, including former staff, associates, and even industry insiders, were reportedly reconsidering their silence as the trial progressed. One chilling aspect of Deal's account involved what he described as the grooming protocol. New hires or collaborators, especially women, were allegedly subjected to tests. They were flown out, intoxicated, and observed. Those who complied were integrated into the inner circle. Those who didn't were silenced and discarded. In one case, Deal claimed a woman who threatened to expose a drug incident involving a young artist was quickly flown to Paris with an NDA and a payout. It's not chaos, he said, it's structure disguised as chaos. That insight, legal experts say, is exactly what makes Deal's testimony so dangerous for the defense. He doesn't just recount events, he contextualizes them, his revelations imply not reckless behavior, but a criminal enterprise. As the prosecution continued to lay out its evidence, from police reports and video footage to text messages and hospital records, the pattern became undeniable. Each new piece echoed Dill's accounts, and the defense, once confident in undermining emotional X's or ambiguous memories, found themselves face-to-face with a man who remembered everything in striking detail. Inside the courtroom, Diddy appeared. Increasingly frail, gone was the bravado. According to reporters, his appearance had changed dramatically, gaunt, pale, exhausted. One journalist quipped, "It's like he aged 5 years in 5 days." Psychologists and body language experts called into media panels suggested the transformation wasn't just physical. It was the crumbling of a man who had built his life around dominance, only to find himself powerless. One of the most compelling aspects of Deal's narrative is how it shifts the frame through which the jury views the accusers. Cassie Ventura, once painted by the defense as a scorned ex, was now understood as someone manipulated by a system designed to blur the lines between consent and coercion. "Yes, I participated," Cassie testified, "because I believed I had to." This stark honesty had a profound effect on the jury. She didn't deny involvement. She acknowledged it and then explained the layers of psychological manipulation that made her believe she had no other option. That moment, according to courtroom analysts, may have been the turning point. The defense, increasingly desperate, attempted to introduce unrelated elements, celebrity relationships, old text messages, tabloid drama. But none of it could outweigh the carefully constructed narrative now supported by multiple witnesses and evidence. Even more alarming for Diddy's team were the rumors of additional subpoenas. Former Bad Boy employees, artists, collaborators, and even family. Gene Deal had named names. According to court reporters, prosecutors were now actively investigating people who were once considered untouchable. The list allegedly included former Danity Kane members like Don Richard and Aubrey O'Day, both of whom have publicly hinted at misconduct. There were also whispers of potential testimonies from Diddy's sons, Christian and Justin Combs, and perhaps most explosively, his mother, Janice Combs. Deal claimed the lines between Diddy's personal life and business empire had long been blurred. If true, the trial could evolve from an individual indictment into a RICO case, one targeting an entire organization. The courtroom, once dominated by Diddy's aura, now belonged to the accusers, the survivors, and the insiders who finally broke their silence. And Gene Deal, once dismissed as just another bodyguard, had become the prosecution's most credible voice. The federal courtroom, once overshadowed by celebrity mystique and paparazzi flashes, has become a graveyard for illusions. The prosecution's strategy, relentless, methodical, is succeeding in what once seemed impossible. dismantling the empire of Sean Diddy Combs from the inside out. With Gene Deal's testimony laying the groundwork, the prosecution has moved swiftly, threading together witness accounts, digital records, hospital visits, and security footage into a narrative so consistent and damning that it's reshaping not only how the jury sees Diddy, but how the public views the entire music industry ecosystem that enabled him. Day after day, evidence mounts, each new revelation compounding the last. Where Deal's memories once stood alone, they are now reinforced by hard proof, images from inside Diddy's New York property showing intoxicated guests, private rooms with locked doors, phones confiscated at entrances, metadata from surveillance, cameras, screenshots of text arranging experiences, audio recordings capturing moments of coercion. What was once labeled conspiracy now resembles architecture, meticulously designed and horrifically maintained. A major shift occurred when court documents verified an incident that Deal described nearly a decade ago involving Kim Porter, the late mother of Diddy's children. According to hospital records and testimony, she sought emergency treatment following a violent domestic dispute. Deal had long alleged she once defended herself by slashing Diddy's wrist during an altercation. For years, this was viewed as hearsay. Now, it's been legitimized in court. The defense team, initially aggressive, confident, has turned reactive. Sources inside the courtroom report visible tension among Diddy's lawyers, who appear to be splintered over strategy. One faction urges a plea deal, the other presses forward, claiming the prosecution is targeting Diddy because of his fame. But as one legal analyst put it, celebrity doesn't shield you anymore. It spotlights you. Diddy's own demeanor has become a symbol of his downfall. During one session, when the court played an audio clip where Diddy allegedly gave explicit instructions for a guest to be taken into a private room, he reportedly dropped his pen and stared at the floor for several minutes. At another point, he asked the judge for a break, whispering, "I'm shaking." This vulnerability, unfamiliar and uncalculated, is breaking through to the jury more than any legal rebuttal. Body language experts have weighed in, noting how Diddy's physical unraveling may signal more than stress. It may suggest guilt. Meanwhile, the prosecution is preparing to expand its witness list. Rumors persist that members of Danity Kane, including Aubrey O'Day, may testify. O'Day has publicly accused Diddy of manipulation and abuse in the past, and her courtroom presence could strengthen the argument that the alleged misconduct wasn't isolated, it was systemic. Equally damaging is the looming possibility that Christian or Justin Combs, Diddy's sons, may be called to testify, particularly in relation to incidents uncovered during raids on Diddy's properties. Although they haven't been charged, their knowledge of and proximity to the alleged activities places them in a critical and possibly compromising position. Then comes the most explosive name on the horizon, Janice Combs. Gene Deal has alluded in multiple interviews to Janice's involvement in facilitating or at least turning a blind eye to Diddy's behavior. He claims she once operated a so-called modeling agency that functioned as a high-end brothel. Though these allegations remain unconfirmed in court, the prosecution seems interested in exploring whether Diddy's power dynamics were learned, inherited, and perhaps encouraged. If proven, the implications could expand beyond individual responsibility to generational culture and enterprise, the kind that triggers full-scale RICO investigations. But even without those testimonies, the damage may already be done. Prosecutors argue that this case isn't about isolated moral failings. It's about a man who allegedly designed an infrastructure to enable, exploit, and silence, and a team of enablers who helped sustain it, from NDAs and cash settlements to choreographed experiences and active surveillance. The prosecution's image of Diddy's empire is chillingly organized. It's not the story of a man losing control, it's the story of one who worked hard to never lose it, no matter the cost. And that brings us back to Gene Deal. In a recent interview, when asked why he chose to finally speak, Deal responded, "I didn't come to burn a man down, I came to stop the burning of others." That statement, now echoing through courtroom halls and news headlines, captures the gravity of his role. He wasn't just a witness, he was the skeleton key that unlocked decades of silence. The final question, of course, is what happens next? Will Diddy face a full conviction? Will more names fall under scrutiny? Will this trial finally mark a turning point in how the justice system treats celebrity power? What's certain is this: the man who once branded himself as Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, and even Love spent decades mastering reinvention, but now, in a courtroom stripped of image, PR, and handlers, there's no brand strong enough to contain the truth. The music has stopped, and for the first time, the world is hearing what's left behind the silence. Asterisk.